David Kerley joins us now. Good morning, David.
How you doing?
Hi, David.
We're okay. Remembering D-Day, asking listeners to tell us about World War II vets that they want to remember on this day as well.
My dad was one of them.
Served where?
He served in Europe. He called himself a replacement. If you watched the Band of Brothers TV series, there was actually an episode called The Replacement. These were the guys. I mean, he was 18. He signed up when he turned 18 and trained and got into the war in early 45. The Bulge was just kind of finishing, and the push to Berlin was all part of him. With the 36th, the T-Patchers from Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. And so I think he was in combat for 4 months. I think that was plenty. It sounds, I didn't serve. I've been in war zones with soldiers.
Sure.
Like so many of them, he didn't talk a lot about it, even when asked.
That's been our experience as well. And I was telling Jane on and off the air, I would sneak as close to the room where my father and his buddies were talking just to hear those stories.
That's the only way you could do it.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and you had to be out of sight.
Yep.
Because they would stop talking if
unless they needed a beer or more cigarettes. Yeah.
It was miserable. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
He got in. It was winter of 45, and he didn't have a lot good to say about it. After the war, the replacements all had to stay for the occupation force, and the guys who'd been with the division, from the beginning, coming through Italy and all the way up into Europe, got to go home. He was sitting at a crossroads in Bavaria in southern Germany, and somebody came up and said, "Hey, do you want to play for the divisional football team?" And he goes, "Absolutely." He'd been a high school football player, and so he was on the 36th divisional football team. He loved it, and one of the highlights in his life was the 36th beat the 82nd Airborne in football. And
Sure. Sure, there's one you can tell for the rest of your life right there.
Yeah.
All right, David Kerley, Boeing needed a win. Did they get one by finally getting a liftoff of the Boeing spacecraft?
Yeah, they got a win. They're having some niggling problems, but they're go for docking here in a few hours at the International Space Station. So, yes, I would say it was a big win for Boeing to get off the launch pad, and the spacecraft seems to be operating as expected with a couple of little problems. They've got some little leaks that they talked about before this launch. It came up after the scrub in early May. They don't think it's an issue. They think they can go ahead and make the docking, and it'll be about a 2-week mission. This is a shakeout. This is like getting your new car and testing all the systems and making sure everything works. And so far, so good. There are a couple things that are a little baffling to me. One, we're not getting live feeds inside the capsule video. We are hearing the audio. In fact, the astronauts are talking about playing, hey, look at Butch on this camera. Well, all that video is going to be fed back after docking from the space station, and we'll see it basically tape delayed. I'm scratching my head about that one. And one of the astronauts, Butch, the commander, just said that in one of a filter, this kind of sounds like the 787 problems they had down in South Carolina when they were delivering planes and the airlines were finding trash and debris underneath the floor. And one of the filters was filled with a bunch of dust and parts of gloves. And, that's no. These are little things. Big picture, answering your question. Yes, Steve, finally this battered brand got a bit of a celebratory win yesterday.
But here's the thing. You get a new car. Like you got a new car in the past year. I have a new car in the last year. You get a rattle.
You go worried.
Rattle bugs
something's
you.
wrong. It should be
bugs
perfect.
I got to go to the garage.
Yeah.
You're in outer space and you figure, we got a couple of leaks.
You got a rattle.
Right. That's a little disconcerting, but you say no, huh?
So it's these are the helium tanks in there are a couple of manifolds that feed what they call, this is more than you want to know, the dog houses, which have little motors to move it around. The helium is used to pressurize the fuel, to push it into the motors.
And to talk funny.
Yes. Maybe that'd be kind of entertaining.
Right? Come on.
Yeah.
A very little molecule. This is not good. It's not good that you have a leak. But they have gone through it and studied it upside downside. It took a couple of weeks actually in May to look at this, and they think they're still within the safe parameters. They basically shut them down when they're not using those motors, when they're kind of cruising, and they will turn them on when they need them and then turn them off again. They think they'll have enough helium to do everything they need to do. So not good to have little leaks. It's a little molecule like hydrogen, very difficult to handle, but it's a no-no.
So 2 questions. The live feed that you said is going to be pre-recorded and then played back later, is that the webcast that they're supposed to do once they dock? That's question one. And then question you, I need to hear about the recycled urine.
Yeah. So basically, there are cameras inside. We saw them before launch. They were showing us pictures inside the capsule. I saw at least 2 angles looking at the astronauts. So those apparently recorded, and there may be other cameras. In fact, in the test vehicles, we've seen more cameras than we're seeing right now. So the idea is they've recorded whatever I don't think they've recorded the entire trip. It's almost a 24-hour trip to the space station, but then they will feed those files down, and then NASA will release them to us. And Boeing, when asked about this, pressed, actually, there were 2 or 3 questions yesterday post-launch about, come on, this is 2024, Apollo did this back in the 60s and the 70s. And the Boeing official executive said, well, maybe in a couple of flights we'll be able to do live. So that's where that is. The webcast is the normal welcoming ceremony that happens on ISS. You'll get those feeds from the International Space Station. And that'll be the hugs and great to have you aboard. First time we've had 3 different vehicles on the space station, I should say. The Soyuz, the Dragon, and the Starliner. The P-pump. You want to know about the P-pump. Okay, so the waste system, it's a $23 million waste system. You can't really carry water to the space station. You'd have to be making weekly flights. So everything is recycled. All the perspiration is pulled out of the air and goes back into the water system, and so does all the urine, and it is sent through a couple of processors, and it goes back into the water system, and that's what they use to drink and rehydrate their food.
And they also really hope...
Who's the tester on that
They
one?
really hope that doesn't malfunction.
Yeah.
So it has malfunctioned. The pump was supposed to last until the fall, and then it was scheduled to be replaced. It broke several months early. So on this test mission, they took off some cargo, some clothes for the astronauts, and put on a new P-pump to go up to the space station. So what they do in the interim is they basically store their urine in bags, which they can do. But at some point, you want to turn that back into water. And, this may all sound really gross, but it's an amazing system. I mean, it's fantastic to think what they're doing there in recycling all their urine and their perspiration. So that P-pump will probably go back in the next several days, a week at the outside, and they will start operating as they were beforehand.
Well, if the international...
Is that everything you needed, Jay?
That's good. Yeah. I'm actually, you got me stuck on the P-pump, because if it is such great technology, maybe we can use that, not in space. And I know people have done that in California. They're starting.
Yesterday, we were at the Adler shooting video for these upcoming commercials we're doing for the show. And they showed us the fecal bag that was used on the Apollo missions that they would use, and then just pop in a compartment behind the seat.
Yeah. Do you remember Matt Damon in the movie The Martian?
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
That's how he grew his potatoes. It was he used everybody's fecal matter. Yeah.
But the International Space Station... the International Space Station launches in 98, so we're talking 26 years ago. You start to have issues. Maybe you want to get new windows. There's a little leaky situation going on. You got a 26-year-old house at this point, and you can't wing into Home Depot and buy things, and it's tough to get a contractor. So these missions have to be at some point to tighten up things, tidy up things, and fix the P-pump.
So this is why Boeing's launch yesterday is so important. NASA has wanted at least 2 providers of capability to get to the space station. And there was a race between Boeing and SpaceX several years ago, and needless to say, the upstart won that race running away from Boeing. But now, if this spacecraft operates properly, docks okay, undocks fine, and returns to Earth the way it's supposed to, and they're just these little problems, it will then be certified, and the Starliner will fly at least once a year so that SpaceX will take a crew up, and then the Starliner will take a crew up. And this is exactly why they want more ability to take stuff to the station. Because, by the way, the station's supposed to deorbit. They're planning on that right now. It's going to come to an end at 2031, 32, right in there. They keep on extending it. It was going to be 2030. There are a bunch of private space stations that are being developed right now, and the ISS, its days are numbered.
How about that? It's all available for your knowledge, your entertainment,
All of it.
your interest. When you read David Kerley and the newsletter Full Throttle, where do we get it?
It's davidkerley.substack.com. David Kerley's one word, DavidKerley. And lots of stuff today. If you're a space geek, get in front of a computer if you can. Not only the docking of the Starliner, but Elon Musk is firing off his Starship for the 4th time, the biggest rocket that has ever taken off.
Today?
Yeah.
In a couple of, actually about, I think it's in about an hour. Yeah.
Unless they forgot to charge it overnight.
An hour and 20
Somebody forgot to plug it
They
in.
may have a leaky valve, too.
Forgot. David Kerley, thank you, my friend.
Always a pleasure. Have a good day, guys.
All right,
Thanks,
be
David.
well. I want to say hi to our listeners of the day, Laura D. and Sam L., huge Cochran Show fans. They both can't get enough of me. Laura D. and Sam L.